For 40 years, there has been a lifeline that has allowed Iran to survive under the heavy iron fist of US sanctions. That lifeline is Dubai. Every year, tens of billions of dollars in Iranian financial activities operate secretly within the UAE. The United States has spent 20 years trying to shut down this channel, but has never succeeded. There is only one reason: the UAE refuses to comply. The UAE is the oxygen for Iran's economy. But as this war has progressed to its current stage, Iran is now personally cutting off this financial lifeline. Within 7 days, Iran launched 1,072 drones and missiles at the UAE, targeting Dubai's international air corridor, which resulted in 70% of flights in the region being grounded. Iran also threatened to strike the Fujairah oil bypass. That is the UAE's only strategic export route for oil to bypass the Strait of Hormuz and enter the international market. Today, the Wall Street Journal released an exclusive report stating that the UAE is considering freezing Iranian assets. If this news is true, then this war, the most important variable, has now emerged. Hello friends, welcome back to Zhengguandian. I'm Zhenfei. Today, let's take a look at another hidden front that is starting to surface in this war: the financial war. Let's see how Iran, under Western sanctions for the past 40 years, has secretly built a financial empire. In addition, let me give you a preview of Sunday's program. I want to talk about the history of the Iranian people, ancient Persian civilization, the historical relationship between the Persians and the Arabs, and the profound influence of Zoroastrianism on the politics and culture of the Persian Empire. The origins of the names Iran and Persia, as well as the historical story of the rise of Shia Islam. If you're interested, subscribe to True Perspective. We'll start on Sunday, and we'll get to the bottom of what it means for the UAE to freeze Iranian assets. First, we need to answer a question: what exactly has Iran done in the UAE? Over the past 40 years, Iran has built an empire, a secret financial empire specifically designed to evade Western sanctions. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution overthrew the pro-American Pahlavi dynasty. The United States immediately froze $12 billion of Iran's overseas assets and cut off international banking channels with Iran. Iran's economy was strangled overnight, unable to sell its oil, unable to receive foreign currency, and even importing essential goods became a problem. This was just the beginning of the sanctions. But the problem is, Iran's economy did not collapse. At the time, Khamenei put forward the concept of what he called a resistance economy, which meant self-reliance, bypassing the West, and building a parallel economic system. We're all very familiar with this. It's just like what the Chinese Communist Party says. And the central hub of this entire system is in Dubai. Why choose Dubai? Well, this brings us to the relationship between the UAE and Iran. Actually, the UAE and Iran weren't friends at the beginning. Formal diplomatic relations between Iran and the UAE began shortly after the UAE gained independence in 1971. At that time, the UAE was made up of 6 emirates, and Iran, under the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty, was one of the first countries to recognize the UAE. The two sides quickly established embassies and began trade cooperation. As neighboring countries, Iran supplied oil and natural gas, while the UAE became a transshipment port for Iranian goods. But from the very beginning, their relationship was overshadowed. Just 2 days before the UAE's independence, Iranian troops quietly occupied 3 strategic islands, which were actually the territory of the UAE's Sharjah Emirate. So, although the two countries appeared to have friendly diplomatic relations on the surface, deep down there was mutual distrust. Moreover, at that time, Iran was a regional power, while the UAE had just gained independence and was still relying on British protection. Politically, the UAE remained constantly vigilant against Iran's expansion. After the Islamic Revolution, the Islamic Republic was established. The UAE felt even more uneasy about this new regime. During the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, the UAE joined the Gulf Cooperation Council and politically sided with Iraq. They opposed Iran's expansion, but economically, they still maintained exchanges with Iran. This formed a strategy of strategic ambiguity that continues to this day, politically opposed, but economically interconnected. And during this period, Dubai itself was undergoing a transformation, and this transformation unexpectedly gave Iran's financial empire a helping hand. In the 1990s, what was the goal set by Dubai's rulers? At that time, they aimed to transform Dubai from a small place on the edge of the Persian Gulf, which had started out relying on oil, into the financial center of the entire Middle East and a global logistics hub. So they began to invest heavily in ports, airports, and trade centres using oil revenues. However, to achieve the goal of becoming a global trade hub, having just ports and airports wasn't enough. They also needed goods and a sufficient number of trading partners to support this platform. And Iran was the most crucial piece of the puzzle that Dubai needed. Why is that? Because Iran is no minor player. Before being worn down by long-term sanctions, it was truly an economic powerhouse in the Middle East, with the world's fourth largest proven oil reserves and the second largest natural gas reserves globally. It was the second largest economy in the Middle East, just after Saudi Arabia. With such a significant neighbour, any aspiring trade hub would find it hard to ignore Iran. Moreover, the two countries enjoy geographical convenience. They face each other across the Persian Gulf with extremely short shipping distances, making transshipment of goods easy and costs very low. So when Western sanctions kicked Iran out of the international financial system, Dubai saw an opportunity. Iran's trade demands happened to perfectly feed the ports, airports, and free trade zones that Dubai was building at the time. Both sides needed each other, and the partnership came together seamlessly. So from that point on, Dubai turned a blind eye and did not fully enforce Western sanctions against Iran. It allowed Iranian funds to flow through its free trade zones and permitted Iranian businesses to register shell companies. Currency exchange offices were allowed to help Iranian funds convert and transfer money out of the country. What was the result? Iranian businesses flooded into Dubai, with around 8,000 Iranian companies registered in the UAE at the peak and about 500,000 Iranian expatriates settling in the UAE. What these people brought was not just trade, but also real estate investment, financial services, and massive cash flows. A significant part of Dubai's status as a financial centre comes from Iranian money being exchanged there. Moreover, the stricter the US sanctions became, the faster and stronger this channel developed. In the 2000s, the US heavily sanctioned Iran's nuclear program, and others followed. However, Dubai-Iran trade tripled, hitting $12 billion. At this point, a subtle balance of power formed between Iran and the UAE. The UAE knew that Iran depended on Dubai, which gave it leverage over Iran, making Iran reluctant to confront the UAE too aggressively. Conversely, the UAE gained enormous benefits from trade with Iran, further strengthening its position as a financial centre in the Middle East. Both sides are holding something over the other, so neither dares to flip the table lightly. Now, you might be wondering about this invisible financial empire that took 40 years to build. Just how big is it? According to a report released by the US Department of the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network in October 2025, the total scale of Iranian shadow banking funds flowing through US bank correspondent accounts is about $900 million. Of that, the UAE handled $6.4 billion, accounting for 71% of the total. The remainder circulated in Hong Kong and Singapore, and this is only the portion that can be tracked through US channels. The scale of black market transactions is even larger, but even just this US-related portion is enough to show us the role the UAE plays in the lifeblood of Iran's entire economy. A high proportion of 71%. The city of Dubai alone shoulders 70% of Iran's offshore financial system, and almost all activities crucial to sustaining Iran's economy and ensuring the operation of its regime are highly concentrated in Dubai. Just how much does Iran rely on Dubai? There are actually a lot of inside stories to this question, but before we get into that, I'd like to recommend to everyone once again the Jeju Island Red Sea Cucumber Repair Gel from Korea that I've been recommending. Red sea cucumber is considered the king among sea cucumbers, and it has outstanding effects in repairing cells and boosting immunity. I've personally been taking it for a while now, and I've noticed a clear improvement in my energy and complexion, and my skin has also gotten better. That's why I bought 2 boxes for my mum as well, and she absolutely loves taking it now. You just tear it open and eat it. It's sweet and tangy, easy to consume, and easy to stick with. There was also a viewer who gave us feedback. After taking this Red Sea Cucumber Repair Gel for 2 months and getting a blood test, he found that his cholesterol and high blood sugar levels had dropped significantly. He also had an old joint injury, and after walking for a long time, his joints would become swollen and painful. Now, after taking this Red Sea Cucumber, he finds it much easier to go up and down stairs, so he was very touched and grateful that we recommended such a good product. So if you have chronic illnesses, such as high blood pressure, or chronic pharyngitis, gastritis, arthritis, gout, and other chronic inflammations, This Red Sea cucumber can help you repair inflammation and restore balance. Moreover, this Jeju Island Red Sea cucumber from Korea is not farmed. It is wild Red Sea cucumber harvested by local female divers. Its effectiveness is far superior to those artificially farmed sea cucumbers raised with hormones. Now, this product is available for shipping to Singapore. If you need it, just click the link below the program or scan the QR code on the screen. Don't forget to enter my promo code Impending at checkout to enjoy a 15% discount. You can also place an order directly by calling 1-8008-805-697. Thank you all for your support. If you find the product works well for you, please be sure to share your feedback with us. Now, getting back to Iran's so-called resistance economy, when you break it down, it actually consists of three parts. The shadow fleet is responsible for secretly selling Iran's oil, and the shadow banks are in charge of laundering the money from those oil sales. The procurement network then uses this clean money, which has been brought back to Iran, to purchase weapons components. These three links together support both Iran's economy and the military machine that keeps the entire regime running. And the UAE's position in all of this is even more crucial. Let's go through each part one by one. First, let's talk about the issue of exporting oil. Iran can't use regular oil tankers. If they do, they'll immediately be tracked by satellites. As for ports, they'll refuse to let them dock, and insurance companies won't provide coverage. So, Iran created its own fleet, a shadow fleet that sails specifically in the dock. It's made up of several hundred old ships, most of which have already been in service for 20 or 30 years. As for the ship owners, they hide behind shell companies, making it impossible to trace their real identities. These ships can change their flags at will. Today they fly the Panamanian flag, tomorrow they switch to the Barbadian flag, and the day after they change to the Cook Islands flag. Wherever the regulations are lax, that's the flag they'll use. As for insurance, it's either fake or there's no insurance at all. These ships sailing on the high seas are all ticking time bombs. But their scale is nothing to scoff at. The global shadow fleet, including those from Iran, Russia and Venezuela, accounts for as much as 20% of the world's oil tanker capacity. Iran's own share consists of several hundred vessels, helping Iran export between 1.3 and 1.6 million barrels of oil per year, with peak volumes reaching up to 2 million barrels. The annual value can generate tens of billions of dollars. So what about a typical shadow tanker like this? How does it transport oil from Iran through the UAE and then to China? It departs from an island in the Persian Gulf, which is Iran's largest oil export port. Late at night, the ship quietly docks and loads Iranian crude oil before setting out from the Persian Gulf. The first thing the captain does is turn off the AIS, which is the automatic identification system for ships, essentially the ship's GPS. Once it's turned off, the ship disappears from radar, drifting like a ghost on the open sea. At the same time, the ship quietly changes its name and flag, making it very difficult for American satellites and intelligence systems to track it. When it reaches the South China Sea or the international waters near the Strait of Malacca, this shadow ship will secretly rendezvous with another clean cruise ship. That is, the oil on board will be transferred from the shadow ship, poured into the other clean ship. The clean ship, which has no record of sanctions, will turn its AIS, the positioning system, back on after the transfer is complete. Then it will forge documents claiming that this batch of oil comes from Malaysia or the UAE. Just like that, Iranian oil is transformed into legitimate cargo. They sail under the flag of the UAE. Ultimately, the oil will arrive at small refineries in China. The Chinese Communist Party has specifically arranged for these small, flexible refineries to handle this cheap Iranian oil, because even if they are discovered and sanctioned, the losses will be minimal. In this way, Iran earns foreign exchange by selling oil. Next, they need to launder the money they've made and send it back into Iran. So how do they do that? At this point, the second part of the process comes into play, the shadow banking network in the UAE. There are three core tools in this network. First, Iranian domestic currency exchange offices, which are similar to underground banks. Second, shell companies registered overseas that, on the surface, show no trace of any connection to Iran. And third, financial transit hubs with lax regulation, like Dubai and Hong Kong. Let's look at a real case. In June 2025, the US Treasury Department imposed sanctions on more than 30 individuals and entities in one go, all targeting a single group. An Iranian family. Three brothers whose last name starts with Z, let's just call them the Little Z brothers. The US Treasury Department described this case as a textbook example of shadow banking. So how did they do it? These three brothers controlled several Iranian currency exchange houses. At the same time, they registered multiple shell companies in the UAE and Hong Kong. On the surface, these were legitimate businesses engaged in oil trading, but in reality, these companies were just fronts for collecting payments on behalf of the national Iranian oil company. The way they operated was that Chinese buyers would never transfer the money directly to an Iranian bank. If they did, the US would immediately find out. So the money would first be sent to accounts of the shell companies, set up by the Z brothers in Dubai or Hong Kong. On the books, it looked like a normal transaction, a clean and legitimate oil trade payment. And then what about this shell company? After receiving the money, it also wouldn't send the money directly back to Iran. Instead, they would first transfer the money to another Hong Kong company, which was also a shell company. Then, this Hong Kong company would transfer the money into a bank account in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE account would then transfer the money to the Iranian currency exchange controlled by Xiaozi's brothers. With each layer the money passes through, the source of the funds becomes a bit more obscured. By the time the money actually reaches the exchange inside Iran, no one can tell where it originally came from. So where did this sum of money originally come from? Then this exchange would convert the US dollars into rials, completing the final step and making the money completely clean. Next, this money would end up in the hands of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, where it would be used to buy weapons, fund Iran's proxies in the Middle East, and advance Iran's nuclear missile program. Iran's Revolutionary Guard and Ministry of Defense need many dual-use items. As in China, these seem like ordinary chemicals, electronics, and tools, but they are actually key materials for manufacturing ballistic missiles and advanced weapons. Of course, the United States and the West would never sell these things to Iran. So, a key buyer is the Chinese Communist Party. Iran has established a global procurement network centered around the CCP, setting up shell companies and intermediaries in both Hong Kong and mainland China. They quietly purchase goods, then find ways to ship these goods back to Iran via the UAE. Let's use a real case to illustrate how this network operates. This case was exposed by the US Department of the Treasury, and it's referred to as the MVM Partnership Network. This network consists of 3 people, 2 Iranians and 1 German. They have been operating this network since 2023, specifically purchasing items for a chemical industry company under Iran's Defense Industries Organization. The items include sodium chlorate, sodium perchlorate, and quinone. At first glance, these 3 items might seem like ordinary chemical materials to a layperson, but they are actually the core materials used to manufacture solid rocket engines, the very heart of ballistic missiles. They purchase these materials from China, buying several hundred tons, and then ship them back to Iran in batches. How do they pay for them? And how do they conceal the payments? This brings us back to the shadow banking system we mentioned earlier. So how does this work in practice? In the Dubai Free Zone, they register shell companies in the same way and then use intermediary companies as payment intermediaries. The money earned from selling oil is transferred layer by layer, eventually reaching the Chinese suppliers. Then the goods are shipped from China to the UAE for transshipment, where a new set of fake documents is prepared, and finally the materials are delivered to factories in Iran. These are the 3 key links that support Iran's economy and authoritarian regime, forming a closed loop. In each of these links, the UAE plays a crucial role. Whether it's the export of oil, the laundering of funds, or the transfer of weapon components, all of it happens in the UAE. But now, Iran's most important financial lifeline is facing its greatest crisis in 40 years. From a macro perspective, Iran's GDP in recent years has been around $370 billion. The oil and natural gas sector accounts for 20% to 25% of the total GDP, but this sector makes up 60% to 70% of government revenue. Without this secret channel through Dubai, Iran's foreign exchange reserves would quickly be depleted. Currently, this shadow network supports about 40% of Iran's foreign exchange reserves, allowing Iran's economy to contract by only 3% to 5% under sanctions, rather than collapsing completely. Today, the Wall Street Journal cited the latest information from informed sources, saying that the UAE is seriously considering freezing Iran's assets. The primary target is accounts and shell companies linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. to freeze them. In recent years, the Iranian authorities have allocated more and more of their oil reserves to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for them to sell. Therefore, the oil revenues controlled by them are actually heavily dependent on the UAE. If the UAE were to freeze these assets, it would deal a huge blow to Iran's entire military force, namely the Revolutionary Guard. This is a precision strike. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is the military backbone of Iran, and in fact, it is also the actual controller of Iran's broader shadow financial network. Freezing these accounts would directly cut off the Revolutionary Guard's ability to procure weapons for combat. Their weapons development, as well as the proxies Iran has supported in the Middle East for many years, would also be affected. In addition, the UAE is evaluating measures to cripple Iran's shadow fleet. For a long time, Iran and the UAE's Fujairah port have provided logistical support for Iran's aging oil tankers, that is, the shadow fleet we mentioned earlier, including ship-to-ship transfers like we discussed before. That is transferring the oil from the shadow fleet onto a clean vessel. This support is provided by Dubai and the UAE and also includes changing flags, forging documents, as well as supplying and repairing the ships, among other things. If the UAE were to shut down these port services or cooperate with the US military to strengthen the interception of Iran's shadow fleet, then Iran's oil exports would face a precipitous decline. The deeper impact lies in the psychological and strategic realms. For 40 years, Iran has regarded Dubai as a safety valve and a lever, believing that the UAE would never completely turn against it, because Iran's trade flows have also been feeding the UAE's economy. But now, Iran has used over 1,000 drones and missiles to directly strike the UAE and has even threatened the Fujairah oil bypass. This is essentially stabbing itself with its own blade, forcing the UAE to pick a side. Should it continue to serve as the oxygen for Iran's economy, or should it protect its status as a global financial center and side with the Western alliance? In the current environment, the outcome is very clear. I believe that as a smart person, he knows how to learn, so even the most stubborn economic resistance cannot withstand self-destruction. If you are interested in Middle Eastern history, Iranian civilization, or the stories and hidden fronts behind today's war, be sure to subscribe to True Perspective. That way, it will appear on your YouTube homepage in the future. You'll be able to see my newly released videos from time to time. This Sunday, we'll talk about the story of this ancient people from another perspective, from the ancient Persian Empire to Zoroastrianism, and then to the rise of Shia Islam. Many of today's conflicts in the Middle East actually had their seeds sown thousands of years ago. All right, thank you all for watching. That's all for today, and I'll see you again on Sunday. Bye-bye.
You said the world is vast and you wanted to see it, your youthful dream, which you bravely fulfilled. From the bunk on the high-speed train to the light of the southern hemisphere, you stumbled along the way, but stayed stubborn throughout. You walked 10 kilometers, wanting to go home, but stood awkwardly outside the door of tragedy. You gritted your teeth and swallowed all your grievances, then turned back and told your mom, I just lowered my head and watched the evening glow. You spoke the truth, but not sharply. Yet it can be a weapon that dispels the darkness in people's hearts. You said your favorite is the sunflower, always growing toward the light. You can explain hot topics with reason and make the complex world clear. Jeune fille, keep flying. Face the sun and move forward through wind and rain. You love the starry sky, and you love to smile. You hide the universe in the name of a needle's tip. You said language is just a coincidence. It's about not fearing grammar, not fearing your accent. You learned English, practiced in front of the mirror, cheered yourself on, and gave others courage too. Even though reality is often unreasonable, reasonable, you still leave kindness here. You spoke the truth, but not sharply. Yet it can be a weapon that washes away the darkness in people's hearts. You said your favorite is the sunflower, always growing toward the light. You can explain trending topics with reason and make a complicated world clear. Really flying, keep flying. Move toward the sun. Face wind, rain. If one day you feel too tired, your fans are willing to carry you together, and you have such an excellent team. Just take a short rest, then come back full of energy. You say thank you, but it's too light, too light. Then let the song remember for you. You're soaring, keep flying. Move toward the sun. Keep pushing forward through the wind and the rain.